Just a quick little beginning for this video because I forgot to do it at the beginning and I do touch on this in the video. This is not a review, this is just my thoughts, but if you're looking for a recommendation, I thought this was an enjoyable episode for PR fans, and the only thing I don't recommend it for, or the only people I don't recommend it for, excuse me, is if you don't want certain things ruined. If something negative might ruin your rewatches of a show that comforts you, and that can really affect you, maybe not watch this if you didn't know about some of these details. But otherwise, I think if you're a PR fan, it's interesting on multiple levels. Now, back to Future Past Awesome for this review. Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to another episode of Dawson Rider Nights. Haven't done one of these in a hot minute. I usually only do it when there's breaking toku news and I want to get those sweet extra 10 views. But I was feeling inspired tonight. Well, it sounds weird to be inspired by this, but I just watched the documentary series, I think it's called Hollywood Demons, The Dark Side of Power Rangers, which has been recommended to me for a while, and I kept an eye on it. It's on Max, and I put it on my favorites, and I kept checking on it, but then I kind of forgot about it after a couple weeks, and then I'm like, let's rewatch an episode of Doctor Who. And then I was like, oh look, the episode's finally out, because the first one was about like the Seventh Heaventh guy. Second episode was also not about Power Rangers, so I'm just like, I don't know, short attention span. Also, I'm trying out, I finally got a ring light to complement the bias lighting, so let me know how it looks if you are so kind to let me know. I might try it later, where I film on the other side of the room, right by the bias lighting. It might look cooler. Right now, it looks Frieza. No, it's a lame joke. And honestly, right now, it kind of looks like I'm doing a Ghost Adventures episode, like, hey, it's Zach Baggins, and whatever, I don't know. Just, if you've ever watched that show, go watch Grave Encounters. It's a hilarious parody horror movie of it. Anyway, I want to discuss it. It talks about a lot of the dark things that have happened in the Power Rangers franchise. Obviously, a lot of heavy stuff, but you know, I'm kind of a funny guy. I mean, I don't know. You probably think I'm annoying. I think I'm annoying. But dark sense of humor. I'm going to have some funny stuff to say. Like, there's obviously some heavy stuff. We don't really get that heavy here on this channel, unless we're talking about Back to the Future. You can just tell the tone. I mean, I'm going to talk about a couple of serious things, but you can tell the tone of this video, or at least part of it, by the fact that my first note for this video is Jeff Pruitt looks like a Cobra Kai. Because amongst this, I do have some notes on the more serious stuff and whatnot, but I also just had some funny observations. Jeff Pruitt looks like a Cobra Kai. So he's mostly interviewed in like his living room or something, but in the first couple shots, he's like going over footage or whatever, and he's got like a black shirt on. Oh, speaking of shirts, by the way, I wanted to wear like an mmpr shirt for this, but I couldn't find my Juice Bar shirt. So this is an mmpr hoodie, if you didn't know. It's got the mmpr black stuff on the back, because I wear this a lot in videos, and I don't know, so surprise reveal. Got distracted. Jeff Pruitt, interviewed in a black shirt. He's like, look, I got muscles. I'm like, oh, he's in shape. But anyway, when I first saw him, I just thought, this guy looks like one of the people they bring in like the later seasons of Cobra Kai, which is an amazing show, by the way, that ended perfectly refocusing on my GOAT, Johnny Lawrence, the true Karate Kid, as Barney Stinson showed us. Anyway, Jeff Pruitt. He looked like one of those characters they brought back in the later seasons when they were running out of cameos. Couldn't get Hilary Swank, apparently. And they're like, hey, remember the guy that walked in the background in the third tournament in the third movie? This is him. And they're sending him after Danny. The other one was they like highlighted some of the locations and stuff of like the command center and just brought me back to that I visited it. Sorry about that. I visited it. Wow, that's hard to say. I visited it. And recently, the show Beef was recommended to me again, and I watched it, and then I talked to my friend that recommended it to me. This is not important at all, but I wanted to talk about it. I just thought it was funny, and I'm like, hey, you know the command center was in that as that lady's mansion, and I've been there, and he couldn't believe me that I was there, and it brought back good memories of visiting it with all the old RR guys. This is the last funny observation, which is, I'm not a big true crime guy. This isn't really true crime, but you know what I mean. It's in that style of documentary. And it was just funny to see Power Rangers stuff in that style, because even though I'm not much of a true crime guy, as of recently, literally today I watched an episode, I fell down the rabbit hole of the Natalia Grace storyline documentary true crime thingy, because I watched the TV show based off of it because Mark Duplass was in it, who's one of my favorite actors ever since the first Creep movie, which is an amazing found footage horror movie if you are into that sort of thing. Anyway, I've been watching that recently, and there was two funny observations I had from it. This is not important at all. I'm waffling on for 5 minutes and waffling on to something British people say. Anyway, I just thought it was funny because, A, I use Power Rangers photos like this all the time, and there were several that I've used multiple times in MMPR-related videos, and it was so funny to me to see it with the dramatic boom, what really happened in Zordon's Zordon's command center, and then they do a boom and they make it gray. It was just so funny to me, and also they kept reusing so many of the same images, both in this and the Natalia Grace documentary, The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, and it made me feel better about reusing photos, or sometimes minimally using photos. Okay, Also, this is just random, but this is a doctor guy. I probably should have looked it up or wrote down his name, but there's a doctor guy who's all in this. I'm like, why is there a doctor doing this? Made sense near the end where they talked about like mental illness and JDF and stuff, but he just looks so familiar. Maybe he was in the Quiet on Set documentary. That's another thing I was going to bring up is like, usually these type of things don't affect me so much in terms of like it ruining my enjoyment of the show. It kind of comes back to the same thing with like cancel culture stuff in terms of like, I'm just trying to watch a movie. Like, I'm not about to look up what every bad thing a person did in a movie is. If I want to watch this movie, I'm going to watch a movie. You know, life is stressful. But, so far, none of the negative stuff that happened in PR has affected me, like, in terms of I can't watch the show anymore or anything like that. I'll admit, it's a little harder to revisit iCarly and stuff since the Quiet on Set stuff. Just a little bit of an ick to it. And a little bit of sadness with Matthew Perry, especially after watching the documentary on him that's on Peacock or whatever. I watched that when I was watching My Mom's Dog a few weeks ago. And I don't know, just makes it a little more sad when you revisit Friends, one of my favorites of all time. All right, let's actually talk about the documentary now, 6 minutes in, as of the pre-editing version of this video. So, Pilot Trini shows up in this, and the only reason I bring this up is because, I mean, it's a super kind of messed up story about them shooting the pilot, and somebody, like, had a heat stroke, and they ripped his putty costume off. I'm like, we gotta keep this going. We all know Saban was, like, super scummy. I'm gonna get into that later, at least a part of it, but this was just funny to me because Pilot Trini, I should have wrote her name down because I wrote Jeff Pruitt's name down. I didn't know him before this, sort of. Anyway, Pilot Trini. Just was funny because I remember her being at so many Morphicons that I went to and like conventions and seeing her. And it was just funny to me, like, make your money, girl. I would do the same thing, make your money however you can. But I just thought it was funny how many conventions she went to. And she wasn't even in an aired episode. And so me and the old RR guys would always make fun of like that. She was at the panels and like she couldn't answer all the questions, so she would always say like, well, if I was in this movie or if I had stayed on longer. So I just thought it was funny. I'm like, of course she's here talking about this. Also it was funny because they set it up like, oh, only she can tell you why she left. And I'm like, oh my god, Daryl touched her, like something happened, I don't know. And then she's like, oh, I just couldn't afford to get out there or whatever. Okay, so this, I don't know if this seems like tasteless or whatever to bring this up in this video, because this is not the point of this. This is about like tragic stuff that's happened, you know, bad stuff, sad stuff. But this documentary very often highlighted MMPR's popularity and what a huge pop culture boom it was. And again, this is not the important part of the documentary, but it's like, I think fans need to watch this. By the way, this isn't a review. This is just my random thoughts. I do recommend you watch it, though. I'll talk about that at the end, if you're the type of person that likes this thing. But I think people should watch this just for the fact that how much it highlighted what a boom it was, because we're in this age of complaining about MMPR. Like, I get it. I'd love for us to live in a world where we were more acceptable of the anthological format like Sentai and Rider. I get it. But I also get why they keep using it. And this is why. This showed. This wasn't just the first season. This was a moment in pop culture. This was huge. People forget that or they don't know it because they didn't live through it. So watch this to find out why. Random other note, I liked C.R. Hana in this. It sounds weird saying it like this because I feel like I'm reviewing her performance in a movie, but I don't know. I just like how much reverence and like love she seemed to have for the franchise, and I just wrote that down because I liked that. In regards to a lot of this stuff, honestly, outside of some small details I'm about to mention, I knew most of this. Like, as a PR fan, we knew Saban was scummy, the non-union stuff, all that stuff, and Ricardo, Medina, whatever, the JDF stuff. We obviously know all this stuff. So a lot of this wasn't new, but I thought a lot about how many people didn't know about this, because we as the hardcore fandom know the core scandals, but I was interested to see, I looked up on Twitter briefly, some of the reactions of people that didn't know about this, because it just seems like such common knowledge. Just some random stuff I wrote down that I didn't know about. When they talked about the Turbo recasting, like, obviously we knew about the Peace Conference stuff, which I always think about when I rewatch it, because I'm like, it was so scummy, but they low-key kind of pulled it off, where, like, they kind of did a good job pulling the wool over Kid Me's eyes. They didn't mention any of the stuff, though, about the other three going off to space to work as the Omega Rangers, so their research was pretty incomplete. The Turbo recast, Nakia Brees had mentioned, like, they found out they were being recast in Turbo by them finding out there was a casting call for new Rangers, which was by Demetria. Oddly enough, that's funny kind of how it felt in the show. But it's funny because I had heard I heard a conflicting report, but I heard at conventions, I thought I remember them saying that like one or more of them did want to leave, so the production was just like, F it, fire them all. Anyway, I didn't know about all the details about Ricardo and what a disturbed individual he seemed like. I honestly just thought it was his roommate. I didn't know about the stuff about like the sister and stuff. Like, this is the type of person I am, where like, for me the worst thing was like, he was looking after animals, and he apparently didn't look after them. I'm like, are the animals okay? I also didn't know about this JDF shooter thing with like this guy that was gonna punish him for taking cocaine. Also the type of person I am, I mean, it's just whatever, who cares? Like, he didn't hurt anybody with that. Like, I don't know, that was crazy. Like, how did I not know about that? Because I knew about all the bullet points. It was just small little details I didn't know about. But I didn't know, like, this Punisher wannabe. And it's funny that all the people that worship the Punisher are people the Punisher would probably hate. What did that? I had no idea about that. That was kind of crazy. Also shocked they didn't bring up, like, that kid character that became a killer. Editing Dawson here that's going to put up this strange, contemplative-looking picture of myself. I was having memory card issues when I was recording this, so it cut off the part where I started to talk about the Power Rangers curse. Just wanted to give context to what I'm about to say, because otherwise it's like a weird jump cut where the timeline got erased. You know, weebly-wobbly, timey-wimey. I have heard about that, but I mostly agree with what Jason Font said, where I've never really thought about the curse being about, like, the bad things that have happened to people that have worked on it, because you could dig through any franchise and find bad things that have happened or people have done on any set. You know, Star Wars fans are constantly just creating a new toxic generation of fans they're going to put down the next generation. So I did more so see the curse as the perception. Like, he talks about how actors have a hard time getting jobs because of the perception of Power Rangers, which is very much tied to what we talk about as fans about how Power Rangers can't get a leg up as a franchise because of its perception, which is just so funny to talk about in this documentary, what a juggernaut it was, all the reasons why it was appealing. And it's unfortunate that that perception persists on so many levels. I mean, obviously you guys know there are so many, you know, actors in the franchise that aren't that great. It's like, I don't think it's Power Rangers, buddy. But, you know, there's some talent in there, especially the Disney era. I think Jason Font's a talented guy. Regardless, though, I think that is the Power Rangers curse, is the perception, which is so unfortunate because there's so many other silly things that have made it. So that's what I think is the Power Rangers curse. Second to last thing I wanted to mention, even though it's technically my last note, is when they're talking about JDF, they talk a lot about Legend of the White Dragon, and I'm like, when is that happening? Because I know they were going to, like, shore it up or whatever after his death to make sure it was, like, the best possible, but we hadn't heard anything in a long time. I mean, I know we're all really waiting for The Order, the movie all of us fans were waiting for. But I looked it up, and I guess there was an update in March that they finished it, and they're just putting finishing touches, and I do want to see that in theaters. That was something I was always going to check out, but I'll be honest, I wasn't a day one theater guy for that. But after his passing, and, you know, the passion he put behind it, I do want to see that. Hopefully it's in theaters, even if I have to pay outside of my AMC A-List subscription. That's right, guys. You're looking at an AMC A-List member. I mean, if I paid for Blood and Honey too, which was actually pretty good. Anyway, last note I wanted to touch on was the last segment was pretty much about JDF. I thought it was kind of weird that they highlighted his brother, and then they did a segment on Twee right in the middle. I'm like, why didn't they do them together? I don't know, I just thought that was weird, because, like, thematically there was a lot of similar stuff. Maybe they wanted to give you a break. Speaking of a break, my memory card issues also cut off the part where I talk about Eric Frank a little bit. Mainly that I didn't know he died by suicide, which just makes everything around his brother more tragic. But also they mentioned that he was going to be like the White Ranger in Zeo, which I think his ex-wife just got confused. I mean, there was a shot of him wearing the suit, but I'm going to presume that was for different reasons. Because I remember him being a red herring for the Gold Ranger, and maybe that was considered at some point. Would have been an interesting timeline. But if that in any way was the case, them somehow resurrecting the White Ranger power to have him alongside the Zeo Ranger would have been interesting. But I just thought that was a really random tidbit that came in, and I could not mention it. I mean, the JDF stuff obviously brought some of the mixed stuff about his life. But the thing for me, my biggest takeaway was actually I didn't cry or anything. Don't want you to think I'm crying. No, I did well up a little bit, though, because I think it's seeing some of his friends talk about him a little bit. Like, JDF stuff obviously hit me in terms of it was so unexpected, and honestly, I forget he's dead sometimes. Like, it just was so surreal that every now and then, like, when I think about JDF, and I'm not thinking about Tommy when I'm talking about something or watching an old episode or whatever, I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe he's gone. Like, I forget about it a lot. But yeah, it hit me a little more in this documentary, and obviously, you know, he wasn't a perfect person. But this last segment really reminded me, in a way, very different circumstances for a lot of reasons, but it reminded me last year of watching the Christopher Reeves documentary that they put out, which I believe is on Max, and I highly recommend that if you're a Christopher Reeves or Superman fan. And that it highlighted somebody that has this certain perception as a character, as an actor, but obviously wasn't a perfect person. They made some mistakes, you know, they did some things that a lot of people would judge them for. And yet, I still, like, respect them a lot. Like, coming out of that documentary, and then this little thing with JDF, where you learn some stuff about him, you know, substance abuse, and, you know, affairs, whatever, doesn't matter, we're all imperfect, that I still respected the good he did, and I think that's the positive legacy that he and Christopher Reeves left that mattered. And I liked that they highlighted that, and, like, what a positive impact that he made. So yeah, I meant to mention this at the beginning of the video, because this isn't a review. This was just my rambling thoughts, some slightly deeper thoughts. This meant to be for deeper, not slightly. But, you know, on stuff like that, and just observations like, hey, this guy looked like a Cobra Kai thug. But I meant to mention at the beginning of the video that I do recommend this. If you're a Power Rangers fan, if you enjoy stuff like this, the only people I don't recommend it to are those that can have stuff ruined for them, where seeing some stuff about your favorite characters or franchise cast in a darker light might recolor some rewatches, and if those are important to you enough where, like, again, I should have said this at the beginning because I talked about it, but if it's important enough to you where it's like a comfort show, like Wild Force, if that's a comfort show for you, maybe don't watch this. But otherwise, I thought it was really well done. I thought it was interesting. I think it's interesting to see the takes from people that aren't in the fandom like us, that didn't know about 90% of this, but I enjoyed watching that. And even though there was some very heavy subject matter, and it reminded me of how many of the negative things are involved in the production of it and whatnot, it almost made me, oddly enough, nostalgic when they talked about the mmpr boom, and reminded me how much the show means to me in a lot of ways, because I think that's an interesting takeaway too. A lot of the actors, even the ones that experience some negative stuff, I think in particular Nikia Brees struck me of, like, she experienced some of the negative stuff in regards to the production, but she still holds a lot of positive memories, and I think you get a lot of that from the conventions if you watch them or watch them online. It's like, yeah, there was some negative stuff, but we still formed some bonds, and there's this special aspect to it. So, I don't know. It was an interesting watch. What did you guys think of it? What were your guys' takeaways? Do you think that, I already forgot his name, and these are my Go Jujer notes, do you think Jeff Pruitt looks like a Cobra Kai, like I do? So anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit mixed. Let me know what you thought of the lighting. Thumbs up to those of you. I will favorite any of those comments, because if I'm able to if I'm able to film more videos at night, that would be great. Anyways, guys, until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.